The woman collapsed against his doorframe like a prayer answered too late. Blood soaked through her torn calico dress, and her eyes held the hollow stare of someone who'd seen hell and walked back to tell about it. But it wasn't the bullet wound in her shoulder that made Jake Morrison's breath catch. It was what she whispered through cracked lips. "Please take the children." Jake's hand tightened on the door handle. Behind her, 7 pairs of eyes stared back at him from the darkness of his porch. Children, ranging from maybe 4 to 14, huddled together like scared rabbits. Their clothes were singed, faces streaked with soot and tears. The oldest, a girl with braided hair, held a baby against her chest while keeping protective arms around the smaller ones. "Ma'am, what happened to you?" Jake stepped aside, letting them stumble into his modest cabin. The woman, barely more than a girl herself, swayed on her feet before sinking into his only chair. "Raiders," she gasped. "Burned out the mission school. Sister Catherine, she didn't make it." Her voice broke on the words. "These are orphans. I was the teacher. Mary Whitfield." Jake had heard whispers in town about the mission school 20 miles north, where a handful of nuns took in children with nowhere else to go. Mixed breeds, abandoned settlers' kids, young ones whose parents had fallen to disease or bullets. "Good Christian work," the preacher said. "Dangerous foolishness," said everyone else. The children pressed closer together, the older ones shielding the smaller. Jake noticed how the teenage girl, Indian and white blood mixed in her features, watched him with calculating eyes, ready to run or fight. A boy about 10 years old clutched a wooden horse, carved crude but careful. The baby hadn't made a sound. "How many raiders?" Jake asked, already knowing he didn't want the answer. "Dozen, maybe more," led by a man with a scar across his throat. Mary's face went pale as fresh snow. They said no half-breed children would grow up on their land. Called us worse things." Jake's jaw clenched. He knew that scar, knew the man who wore it like a badge of honor. Clay Hutchins and his gang had been terrorizing settlements from here to the Colorado border, but they'd never touched anything church-related before. Something had changed. Something had made them bolder. Outside, thunder rumbled, though no storm clouds had gathered. It took Jake a moment to realize it wasn't thunder at all. It was hoofbeats. "Get away from the windows," Jake commanded, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. The children obeyed instantly, though the oldest girl kept her suspicious gaze fixed on him. Mary tried to stand and immediately crumpled, her wounded shoulder giving out. Jake peered through a gap in the curtains. 8 riders circled his property like vultures, their torches casting dancing shadows across his yard. At their head sat Clay Hutchins, his throat scar visible even in the flickering light. The man's smile was a predator's grin. "Morrison," Clay's voice carried across the night air, "we know you got something that belongs to us." Jake's mind raced. He could give them up, turn over the children and Mary, wash his hands of the whole mess. He was 1 man against 8, and his nearest neighbor lived 5 miles away. No one would blame him for choosing survival over heroics. The baby started to whimper, and the Indian girl, she couldn't be more than 14, gently rocked her arms. The motion was so tender, so protective, that Jake felt something shift in his chest. When had he become the kind of man who'd weigh a child's life against his own comfort? "What belongs to you?" he called back, though he already knew the answer. "Don't play stupid, Morrison. We finished our business at the mission, just cleaning up loose ends now." Mary grabbed Jake's arm with her good hand. "Don't," she whispered. "Please, they'll kill them all. The little ones, they're innocent." Jake studied the faces around him. The 10-year-old boy still clutched his wooden horse, knuckles white. Twin girls, maybe 6 years old, held hands so tight their fingers had gone pale. The teenage girl met his eyes with defiance that reminded him of his younger sister, the one who died of fever 3 winters ago. "You got 60 seconds to send them out, Morrison," Clay shouted. "After that we come in shooting." The children pressed closer together, instinctively forming a protective circle around the smallest ones. Jake had seen grown men show less courage facing down armed killers. These kids had already survived 1 massacre tonight. How many more could they endure? "Morrison, 50 seconds. Jake checked his rifle. 6 shots. His revolver held 6 more. 12 bullets against 8 men. The arithmetic of survival had never looked bleaker. But as he watched the oldest girl stroke the baby's head with infinite gentleness, whispering what sounded like a lullaby in words he didn't recognize, Jake Morrison made his choice. He'd been running from ghosts for too long. Tonight he'd stand and fight. Thunder rolled closer. Only this time Jake was sure it wasn't hoofbeats at all. The first bullet shattered Jake's front window, sending glass cascading across the floor. The children dropped flat without being told. They'd learned this dance before. Mary pressed herself against the wall, cradling her wounded shoulder, while Jake returned fire through the broken pane. "Stay low," he barked to the oldest girl. "Keep them quiet." She nodded once, fierce determination replacing the fear in her dark eyes. "My name's Sarah," she said. "Sarah Crow Feather. These are my brothers and sisters now." Jake's first shot took down one of Clay's men, spinning him from his saddle. His second missed, but sent the raiders scrambling for cover behind his woodshed and fence posts. Clay's laughter rang out across the yard, cold as winter wind. "You're just postponing the inevitable, Morrison. We got all night." A torch arced through the air, landing on Jake's roof. Within seconds, smoke began seeping through the ceiling boards. Another torch followed, then another. They weren't just trying to kill him, they were trying to burn him out. "The root cellar," Mary gasped, pointing toward a trapdoor near the kitchen. "Get the children down there." Sarah was already moving, lifting the baby while shepherding the smaller children toward safety. The boy with the wooden horse hesitated, looking between Jake and the cellar. "Go," Jake told him. "I need you to protect the little ones." The boy's chest puffed with sudden pride, and he scrambled toward the trapdoor. Sarah helped lower each child into the darkness below, her movements efficient and calm. She'd done this before, Jake realized. Led children to safety while death rained down around them. More bullets punched through the walls. Clay's men had found their rhythm now, taking turns to keep Jake pinned while the flames spread overhead. Smoke thickened the air, making each breath a struggle. "Sarah," Jake called as the girl prepared to follow the children into the cellar. "There's a tunnel back there. Leads to the creek. If something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you," she interrupted, her voice carrying authority beyond her years. "You're not dying tonight, Mr. Morrison. Neither are we." The ceiling beam above them groaned, weakened by flames. Jake could hear Clay's men moving closer, their boots crunching on broken glass and scattered debris. They'd be at the door any second. That's when the real thunder arrived. Not hoofbeats, but something far more dangerous. Lightning split the sky, followed by a crack that shook the earth. Then the rain came down like God's own judgment, hard enough to make the flames hiss and sputter. But Clay Hutchins wasn't the type to let weather stop his business. His voice cut through the storm's roar. "Time's up, Morrison. We're coming in." The storm bought them precious minutes, as Clay's men struggled to keep their torches lit and their powder dry. Jake used the respite to check on the children in the root cellar, finding them huddled together but safe. Sarah had positioned herself at the tunnel entrance, ready to lead them to freedom if the worst happened. "Here," the boy with the wooden horse said, pressing the carved toy into Jake's hands. "My PA made it before the fever took him. It's for luck." Jake turned the horse over in his palms. The craftsmanship was rough but loving, every groove carved with patience and care. A father's final gift to his son. "I can't take this. You can give it back after we're safe," the boy said with absolute faith that such a moment would come. Mary struggled down the wooden ladder, her face pale from blood loss but her eyes clear. "There's something you need to know," she whispered to Jake, "about why they came for us. The children are mixed blood. I understand, it's more than that." Mary glanced toward Sarah, who was singing softly to comfort the younger ones. Sarah's father was a cavalry officer, her mother Crow tribe. When he died he left her a land deed, 500 acres of good grazing land north of here. Jake's blood chilled. "Hutchins knows about this. Someone told him. Sarah doesn't know what she's inherited yet, but Clay does. He's been buying up land around there for months. That deed stands in his way." Above them footsteps crossed the floor. Clay's men had entered the cabin. Jake could hear them moving through his belongings, searching. One laughed, a sound like breaking bones. They're not here for the children's blood, Jake realized. They're here for the land, and now they're here for you too. Mary said quietly, you chose to protect us. That makes you an enemy. Jake looked at the carved horse in his hands, then at the faces surrounding him in the dim cellar. The twin girls had fallen asleep against each other. The baby dozed in Sarah's arms. Even in the midst of terror, children found ways to rest, to trust, to hope. Sarah, Jake called softly. She looked up from her lullaby. That tunnel leads to the creek. Follow the water south for 2 miles, then head west to the Tanaka Ranch. Tell them Jake Morrison sent you. They'll keep you safe until this is over. What about you? I'm going to buy you time to run. Sarah's jaw set with familiar stubbornness. We don't leave our own behind. The words hit Jake harder than any bullet. When had he become part of their family? When had these orphaned children claimed him as their own? Overhead, Clay's voice boomed. Found the cellar, boys. Looks like we got ourselves a turkey shoot. Jake burst from the cellar like an avenging angel, his rifle speaking thunder in the confined space. The first raider dropped before he could turn. The second managed to draw his gun before Jake's bullet found its mark. Clay dove for cover behind the overturned table, his scarred throat working as he shouted orders to his remaining men. But the storm had scattered his crew. 2 had taken shelter in the barn. Another tried to circle the cabin and found himself trapped in mud up to his ankles. The flames on the roof sputtered and died under the relentless rain, leaving only smoke and the acrid smell of charred wood. Just you and me now, Morrison. Clay's voice carried false bravado. Come out and face me like a man. Jake reloaded methodically, his hands steady despite the chaos. Through the broken window, he could see Sarah leading the children through the tunnel toward the creek. Mary brought up the rear, stumbling but determined. They'd be safe soon. Your quarrels with me, Clay. Jake called back. Let them go. Can't do that. That half-breed girl's got something I need. Clay made his move, rushing from cover with both guns blazing. Jake's first shot took him in the shoulder, spinning him around. His second caught Clay's center mass, dropping him to his knees. The scarred man looked up with surprise, as if he'd never imagined his own mortality. The land deed, Clay gasped, blood speckling his lips. It's in my saddlebags. She's got legal claim. I know. Jake kept his rifle trained on the dying man. She'll grow up to use it right.
Oh.
Clay Hutchins died with his eyes wide open, staring at nothing. His remaining men, hearing the gunshots and their leader's silence, melted away into the storm like shadows at dawn. Jake found Sarah and the children huddled by the creek, soaked but alive. Mary had collapsed against a cottonwood tree, but she was breathing. The boy pressed his wooden horse back into Jake's hands with a gap-toothed grin. Told you it was lucky, he said. 3 months later, Jake Morrison stood on the porch of a new cabin, larger than his old one, with room enough for a growing family. Sarah Crow Feather, now legally his ward, rode fence with the authority of someone born to the land.
Oh.
The other children had found homes with families throughout the territory, but they visited often, drawn back by bonds forged in fire and terror. Mary Whitfield taught school in the rebuilt mission, her shoulder healed but her eyes forever changed by what she'd witnessed. She and Jake had taken to sharing Sunday dinners, conversations growing longer as autumn settled over the valley. The carved wooden horse sat on Jake's mantelpiece, a reminder that sometimes the greatest treasures came from the smallest hands. And on quiet evenings, when Sarah sang lullabies to the baby she still considered her sister, Jake Morrison understood that family wasn't always born in blood. Sometimes it was chosen in the dark, defended with everything you had, and cherished for all the years that followed. The land stretched before them, infinite with possibility, while thunder rolled gentle in the distance.